my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course. It is Thursday, so it means it's time for our Thursday Trends episode. And first Thursday Trends of 2023. I still have to get used to saying that. My guest today is the homie. She is a life coach as well as the host of the Toxica in Recovery podcast. Brenda Juarez, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling ready. 2023 got me on my abundance mode, you know?
Okay, that's what I like to hear. We'll get into all that. I love hearing that. I definitely want to hear some of your ideas for 2023 or goals or things that you're striving for. So we'll definitely tackle a bit about that, because I think that's good to kind of, put people on to goal setting as well as even just, remind them if they haven't yet. It's good to have some sort of vision for what you want your year to look like. So we'll do all that. But first, man, I wanna do some trending stories as we always do. Our guy Bad Bunny, who is always on the show for doing something positive, has found his way into the nonsense part of the show. So we'll get into that for the people in the back segment. We'll also talk about Republicans and them taking forever to elect a House Speaker in Kevin McCarthy. We'll talk about Biden and him continuing or now getting behind, I should say, a Trump migration policy that was made to keep immigrants from coming to this country, essentially keep people from immigrating into this country. So we'll talk about that. And then Coachella, on a positive note, we have some really incredible diversity going on when it comes to the headlining acts at this year's Coachella. The announcement just came, I think this week. So we'll talk about that in our Mi Gente segment. But first, let's talk about this nonsense in a segment we call For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the Say it louder for the people in the back.
All right, so we're going to start on a lighter note because the politics stuff gets a little bit heavy, but we'll talk about Bad Bunny right now. So have you seen the video, first and foremost, of him tossing this person's phone?
I didn't. I was trying to find it and I couldn't find it. So I don't know what it looks like.
So I mean, just to paint a picture for anybody at home who hasn't seen it, he was in the Dominican Republic over the holidays, over New Year's. A fan, I believe it was a woman, came up to him and was sticking basically a phone in his face while he was walking and like trying to film him and her, kind of like a selfie mode type of thing. And he just straight up grabs her phone and like tosses it in a nearby body of water that is next to him and keeps on walking. So obviously there's a lot of controversy around that. He had to respond to it, and he says, quote, "The person who comes up to me to greet me, tell me something, or just meet me will always receive my attention and respect. Those who come to put a damn phone in my face, I will consider it for what it is, a lack of respect, and treat it as such." So he's been sticking to his guns. He also posted some sort of like cryptic, I don't know if it was a tweet or some sort of message talking about like they're going to miss me when I'm gone type of thing. So it seems like he's not loving the backlash. When I was in Puerto Rico, this was all people could talk about on the radio going back and forth. So I'm curious for you, what do you think about this, Bad Bunny throwing a fan's phone in the river?
I mean, honestly, I think they deserved it because anyone like, okay, I'm from the hood, right? I grew up in Watts. Like, if you did that shit in the hood, you'd be lucky if just your phone got thrown, right? So it's like, just because they're celebrities doesn't mean that they don't have the right to, like, what happened to 6 feet? I mean, we were just having like, don't get close to people. Like, I think they were overstepping like their boundaries and not like respecting his personal. And like he said, because I read what he said, and he said, like, had someone just been like, hey, can I get a picture? Or hey, can I? That's all he wants, and or that's all it seems like he wants. I don't know him personally, right? But I feel like it was kind of deserved. Like you don't just go do that. They're still humans. They're still people. Just because they're celebrities doesn't mean that they don't deserve to have like some space and privacy from people, you know?
Right. No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, on one hand, I do have empathy. I mean, phones are expensive these days, right? And is not easy to come by. Especially, I mean, I don't know her situation, but if she's from the Dominican Republic, just like in Puerto Rico, things are hard to come by for certain people. Certain people are struggling in those areas. So for that, I do feel for her, but I do agree with you. I think that he should have gone as far as to throw the damn phone in the water. Probably not, but I do agree that we seem to forget that there are human beings here, right? And I'm nowhere near on the level of somebody like a Bad Bunny, but I've had one or two instances where people have thrown a phone in my face. And it's like they're basically saying to perform, you know what I'm saying? Like dance monkey, essentially, right? And it's a really uncomfortable kind of situation where, people are kind of forgetting the human in you, and you just want to have some sort of self, respect, and somebody showing you a level of respect, and at the end of the day, what is this girl doing, right? She's posting this picture or a video, whatever it's going to be, to get some sort of like clout off of being, somebody who met Bad Bunny, right? So she's using him as somebody to, get a pat on the back from anybody that follows her on social media or whatever, right? So it is kind of not, I don't know, it's not a great situation in general where it's like somebody just being a fan and genuinely just wanting to talk to you about something. It is a bit of kind of like clout chasing, and like he said, I think if you just come to somebody with respect, you just have the decency to talk to somebody like a normal human being. I don't know. I've never been a super fan like type person where I lose my mind if I see somebody famous, but I just think we forget that there's a human on the other side of the phone and the people that we follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I guess I am a very like empathetic person, but I just feel like when you do that to somebody, when you've got that close to somebody, like the fact that you were close enough for him to grab the phone and
Right.
launch it,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I don't know. But I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully she learned her lesson and now she won't be doing that again.
I mean, I would think she learned her lesson after this, and I'm sure this has happened so many damn times to him that he's like over it at this point, and like she ended up being that last straw. But I think we all have to kind of have a bit more self-respect for one another and understand that we are all human beings, regardless of what we do for a living. And you have to approach people the way that you would want to be treated. It's the same thing. I never get people who like interrupt a celebrity while they're eating dinner or with their family or something like that. It's just like, there's a time and place for everything, and I think you gotta just respect boundaries, man. I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, and I think I've heard people just try and say like, "Oh, well, they know what they signed up for," like, and it's just like, no, because I feel like a lot of people too, especially in the art industry, like,
Yeah,
they don't always know if they're gonna make it, right? Like, they don't
right.
know if it's gonna kick off or not, or if it's gonna be a one-time hit. So, I mean, just like, yeah, people, I think it's sticking to what you said of just like they are human. Like,
Yeah.
it's still a human soul in there. They still go through all the things, they still eat, they still do all the stuff that you do. So, like, yeah, give them their space.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, like the fans are what made him. The fans are what put him in this position." And there is some truth to that, but at the end of the day, if he wasn't incredibly talented, if he didn't have a vision for his career, then it doesn't matter. There would be no fans essentially, right? So you can't sit here and say that we the fans made him, therefore he's like a slave to us for forever type of thing. Like, no, he had to work at his craft. He had to become great at it. He's put in a lot of time and effort to accumulate those fans. Now, do I agree that I think in the arts you do bear a bit more of kind of the weight of the people that support you because it is so difficult, to make something happen. And truly those fans are the ones that are helping you, turn your passion into a career. I completely get that. And, as somebody who's forever grateful of anybody who listens to this podcast for the fact that they've allowed me to do this as a job, I'm forever grateful. But there also is a boundary, right? I owe a lot to the people that support me, but at the same time, you don't own me either, right? Like I don't owe my life to you. I had to also do something to get here, so I don't believe in that argument totally.
Absolutely.
So I think, all right, we've gotten some of the silly stuff out of the way here. Let's talk about politics, the world of politics. We're going to talk about what happened with the House, right? So Republicans have taken the House after this midterm election. They were trying to elect a House Speaker. It took them 15 votes to elect Kevin McCarthy to the official position of House Speaker. And basically, you had a fraction of the Republican Party that was holding out and basically using the thin margin that Republicans have as a means to try and get Kevin McCarthy to bend to whatever requests that they had, right? And this is unprecedented, 15 votes to, in multiple days. Just absolutely ridiculous. A reminder also that we, the taxpayers, are paying for all of these things. So they are wasting our tax dollars. And regardless of where you fall on the aisle, how much you pay attention to politics, your involvement in all of this, I think for me, and I feel like I say this a lot at this point, but it's just jarring to see people having no shame in publicly displaying the fact that they are there just to serve themselves, right? Like them holding out on these votes and trying to get, prime positions on certain committees is not for the American people. It is not for the people who pay their salaries. Again, we, the taxpayers. It is simply just for them to have more power, and they're willing to make a mockery of our democracy. They are willing to waste precious time. And I don't know if it's, I don't know, this hyper connected era that we live in, we kind of see everything. But to me, it's kind of scary that they don't even feel the need to kind of hide this stuff and have no shame whatsoever from the American people just viewing them wasting our time and tax dollars.
Yeah. And so very transparently, I'm not big on like looking at what's going on politically in the world, right? Like,
Sure.
I get a lot of my politics from you, actually. I've been listening to you from the get. And like, if I hear something that I'm like, I don't get it, then I'll like look it up and then I'll talk to my husband about it. And then, like that's how I'll make my decision. So, I don't really know much about Kevin McCarthy and all of this, but what you said right now, it does sound like, it sounds almost like, and some people who have been in a toxic as fuck relationship like that will understand of like when the person gets caught cheating and then they're just like, okay, well, I'm not going to hide it anymore. That's kind of what it sounds like with you. Like, okay, we got caught that we're this. Well, now we're just not going to, there's no need to hide it because now you've proven that you're still going to stay here. You're still going to follow me. You're still going to, do whatever. So what's the need of hiding it for now? Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting out of that. And yeah, it does push me still to do my homework more because I feel like a lot of people there's a lot of people like you who will look into it and have maybe their perspective or whatnot. And then there's people that it's almost even scary. Like it's scary to look it up because then you can go down the rabbit hole of like, oh, then a conspiracy theory. And I think that's what has held me back a lot. And that's why, like, I get my information from you and then I'll go do my own little stuff. And then that's about it. Like, I watch zero news. I follow zero political people or like, but it just sounds like we need to start putting pressure and asking for what we deserve. And I'm always really big about the intention. So I think it's like, are their intentions just strictly for them? Mm-hmm. Like, do they have no intention to help the people as a whole and not just the people that they can help that are going to get some benefit from being their like, follower or like their Republican or whatever party. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just where I land of like, if you guys are doing this and being that like open about like, I'm just going to take my time and I'm just going to, waste this money or this funding and even like your time, it's like, how can it takes me back to reflecting like, okay, now how can we as the country, like start putting the pressure to make sure those people start filtering out and filtering in the right people. And I've asked my husband that and I've asked before that. And my husband was just like, it's because the people that want to make a difference usually don't want to become a politician because of the stuff. And so then I'm like, well, how does it happen then? How do we get the change?
Yeah.
What needs to happen? So I'm still lost and confused in that. So I don't know if you have like a answer to that. Like, how do we make the change if the people who want to make the change don't want to be in those positions because they don't want to be surrounded by a circle of people like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair question because It's true. The amount of shit that comes along with you being a politician, especially in today's political climate where, if you disagree with, a person's point of view, you're getting death threats, you're getting, people leaking your public information, people like AOC have openly talked about the amount of death threats that they get, the security precautions that they have to go through just because they are a prominent figure of the Democratic Party. So it is a scary kind of thing to think to yourself, oh, I want to thrust myself into that world. And on the flip side of it as well, the scary part I think about our modern day political system, and to be fair, we have extremists on both sides, but particularly with the Republican Party and the faction that is obsessed with Donald Trump, he has developed this sort of cult-like power over the people that follow him, right? So it doesn't matter what's done publicly, what evidence is presented, they'll keep finding ways to refute it. And to your point, it is like a toxic relationship, right? Because that is essentially what many cult leaders have done historically in the past, right? They brainwash people into believing in their own superiority and into thinking that they can never be wrong, and people just blindly follow. And that is sort of what is happening. And then on the B side of that, modern day politics, because it kind of is pop culture, a lot of these people are using it as a means to become famous, right? As a means to feel powerful. The Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, who is like some crazy conspiracy theorist, and there's this other guy, George Santos in New York, who has been ousted as a complete fraud, like lied where he went to college, lied about the jobs that he had, lied about himself being a successful entrepreneur. And he, has no shame walking into Congress, and people are calling for him to resign. Republicans in New York City, in New York as a whole, are calling for him to resign. And he's saying he's not going to, right? Like, for these people, it is literally, this is their pathway to like some sort of fame and power, right? And it's no different than people on social media who will put all kinds of bullshit out there because they know it's going to get clicks and views. Somebody like an Andrew Tate and all of the people that flock to his content about like this toxic and hyper masculine bullshit, right? And half of them don't believe in what they're actually saying, but they know that if they repeat the proper talking points, they're going to get others following them. And it's just this weird world that we live in. And I think power has obviously always been something people strive to get. There's obviously always been corrupt politicians and things like that. I think for me, what is scary is the fact that now it's all pretty much transparent and on display because we have so much access to everything. Yet it seems like people are becoming more and more extreme to their affiliation than ever. And I guess to answer your question about what can we do or things of that nature, it's like, yeah, I guess, it can be a bit deflating because at the end of the day, the person with the best heart, the person with the best plan of action doesn't always win, right? Because there is that other factor of people who are not necessarily heavily vested in politics and are more so looking for somebody that they like. What is the likability factor? And that's always been a thing, so it makes it extremely difficult to want to get the right people in. And I think we all just, I don't know, we all kind of have to do our part to a degree. And I think it's not healthy to be obsessively involved in politics. You know what I mean? Like, not because that's just toxic as fuck. It's really depressing when you watch the news every day. I've even had to limit my own intake because it just feels like the world is falling down every time you watch it. But it is important to stay informed because I think it is a really scary time period. And, I think when you do get people that are really there to serve, the community and want to make a change, it's important for us to just get behind them and support that. And yeah, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer. I mean, the reality is I've thought about this a lot where I'm having issues with my town right now because we have my town where I have my studio space. It's a very small town and the town people who have lived here forever are in the ear of the mayor, and the mayor is making decisions based upon what they want, right? And for me, it's like, this is bullshit. There's so much that could be done. And then a part of me is like, you should run for office. And the other part of me is like, why the fuck would I want to get involved in that? Quick anecdote. I can remember my father was involved in public office when I was young in New York City. And he held a very small position on the school board. But even with that, we had people following us when we were going home from places. We had people who broke into our car to try to steal information. We had all kinds of threats that were posed against us. People trying to pay him off. And even him with the best intentions, he got out of politics for that very reason. It was a scary fucking thing that these people would have this sort of pressure to be putting on your family when you're just trying to do the right thing. And yeah, it is sad that people who do want to make change, who do have a good heart, are having to make the best decision for them and their family and not get involved because of how dirty of a game it is.
Yeah, damn. I think what I got out of that, of you answering that, so thank you, it is very much like when you find those people that seem to really have the best intention and feel like they can do it, it is back up and support them.
Right.
And so, and even right now that you said that too about your dad, like I was just like, so to some degree, I was, I guess, involved in politics. I just didn't know it was. So I live in a very small town too. And after 2020, when I resigned from my career to like start life coaching and everything else, I just started, I was like, I want to know how to help this community. I joined everything. And up until like a few months ago when I was like, okay, I'm gonna double down on my stuff that I have going on. So therefore, if I'm not giving my full attention and focus on the boards, I need to resign because then I'm not doing them a favor. I'm doing them a disservice.
Yeah.
But I was president of the local school district. You know, I was vice president of the local chamber. I was in the water district. Like I was on all the boards. And yeah, it's like you realize that even from within, there's only so much you can do because when you're on a board, when most people are taking a vote, you know, eventually you could be the one that votes the other way and it's still going to go, opposite. And so what I got out of all of that I had learned from being on the boards was like, now I know where we're struggling, where we need help. And now I know that I couldn't make a difference from within. So that's why I also decide, let me step back, let me work on me, let me make sure my home, my economy is good and that I'm efficient at that so that when I'm in a place where I can financially give back to or make the connections to the people that can help us get the ball rolling in the right direction, that I'm able to do so. So, I mean, I think that's kind of what I'm getting out of this. Like, okay, if these people are just fucking with our time and money, then educate yourself on that. And you can do that very at a micro level in your own community and support the people that seem to really be behind it in a good way, because like you said too, at some point they might have a different view or perspective, and that doesn't mean that they deserve to get like shit on and canceled and know threat. And I think that's super scary, like to get broken into or to get the death threats. Like it almost seems like to be a politician, you need to have someone that's like single and like doesn't want kids and doesn't want a family, because then, and I've said that to like my husband, I'm like, why do gang members or like people that are really top in like, in like military, like why do you have a family at that point? Because then they come after your family to get you, and that's scary and that sucks. So I mean, I definitely, though, I am very much keeping the like positive outlook, the optimistic outlook that within our generation and the next ones, like with my kids, I think that hopefully we'll start seeing that change, and we just have to really start in our own home economy and teaching our kids. So as much as I'm not like a huge fan of being super into politics, I want to make sure that I give my kids the tools so that when they're older, they can start really. And I do think that that generation, what is it, Z, or what is the last one?
Yeah, Gen Z, I think is what
they're open. They're talking a lot. They're not fucking letting themselves just get ran over. They're not scared anymore, or as much as even millennials or previous generations. So I think it's now just providing them like this, having the open conversation where even if they have a question, they won't feel stupid, or if they have a little bit of a different perspective, they're not going to feel like threatened by asking the question or making the opinion, so that when they grow up, they can be like, I don't like that politician. Let's make some shit happen, So yeah.
No, absolutely. It's organizing, and I think that that's probably the best thing. I mean, if people stop voting for these cultists, essentially, they're gonna break from the MAGA cult because it's not working for them anymore. It's not profitable in the form of gaining power, right? So that's really what has to happen. And I think this infighting that you're seeing in the Republican Party is a reflection of like them being a bit disappointed that not as many people came out to vote for them in the midterms, and they are kind of having, I don't want to say to come to Jesus moment, I don't want to give them too much credit, but there is at least some people being like, wait, what the fuck is going on right now in our own party? And the last thing I'll say, I don't want to end on a sad note, but like, at the end of the day, the greatest martyrs, sadly, like people like Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, those people end up being taken out by the powers that be, right? The ones who decide to speak out and fight against the status quo, sadly, don't always end up being able to see a full and fulfilled life as they should, and that would deviate most people from wanting to do that. So I think it takes a very special person who's kind of willing to put that in line, and I think we all have a part to play. We all don't have to be Dr. King or Malcolm X, but yeah, I don't know. It's a tough thing to want to answer, like what is the right thing or what should we all be doing. But I think playing our roles, whatever that might be, whatever it's defined for us that makes sense, and organizing behind that, I think makes the most sense. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is President Biden planning to expand Title 42 and crack down on migration. Now, Biden is expanding upon a Trump era law that was enacted called Title 42, which they basically enacted during COVID, citing health reasons why we should be keeping people from immigrating into the country. It has continued long past the reason that they gave. And even with that, the Supreme Court blocked the original attempt at undoing it. And that was Biden trying to undo it. Now his administration is embracing it and plans to use it as a means to expand legal migration as well. That's what they're telling us, right? So in his first speech focused exclusively on migration policy, Biden introduced the Title 42 expansion, explaining his administration's intentions to crack down on migrations from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. However, Biden noted that they do plan on using these stringent new policies as a means to make more room for legal migration in the near future. Again, that is what they're saying. They're also saying that if he's to do this, Mexico would agree to accept migrants from those 4 countries. And they're hoping that this further discourages migrants from Cuba and Nicaragua to enter the U.S. illegally. The administration is also utilizing pathways to allow a consistent flow of legal migration. Additionally, they plan to use parole authority to regulate migration, a policy used to accept refugees from Afghanistan and the Ukraine. Now, I just threw a lot out there. The gist of it being they're now embracing this Trump policy and saying that they're going to then use it as a means to legally help people come into this country. Historically, though, we haven't really seen that from either side, the embrace of immigrants, unless it's from a place like Ukraine, which obviously is going through dire circumstances, but feels like people like that are treated a lot differently than people from Latin America. I mean, I know if I'm not mistaken, your family's from Mexican background, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm sure this whole thing, even if you're not heavily involved in what's going on the political side, I'm sure it does hit close to home for you.
It does. And again, like this is even with family that has recently became citizens in my family. Yeah. This conversation was had of just like, okay, what's bad about people coming? Like, I don't understand that, because I had a family member who said, like, I'm not against it, but what about the people that are here now? Like, what are the people that have already came in here and they don't have access to things, they need help and support? Like, what about getting them like their citizenship first instead of bringing more people in when we haven't even taken care of the ones that are here yet?
Right.
And that shit had me like stuck for a second, because at first I was like, how could you not? Like, I was already instantly like reacting to being like, oh, so you think like you are coming from immigrant background too, so how could you not support it? And they're like, no, it's not that I don't support it, it's that like, how can we help what's already here? Because some of our own family, it has taken them over a decade to get their citizenship, right? They are not allowed to go back to see their sick family members or funerals or whatever it is, right? So from that sense, I'm like, okay, to what you're saying, that yes, you're going to slow some stuff down, but then you're going to make the process the right way. Okay, but back to accountability of like, how do I hold you to it though?
Sure.
Can you give me like milestones and markers of how you're going to start meeting that? Like, when are we going to start seeing this happen? So that it's not like you just fucking talking up and giving people what they want to hear again, because I think that's what happened, right? Like, you say shit and then you don't follow through. So I think that's where I'm at with that. Like, I understand. And then it kind of trips me out too, because being like I was born here, but my dad was still born in Mexico. And yeah, I have a lot of family from Mexico.
Yeah.
Mexicans are not the nicest. And that's something that I have in a mission to do, of just like Latinidad. Like, we need to come together. They're not really fucking nice to Salvadorians or Hondureños or Nicaraguenses, or, like,
Yeah.
so even them saying like, okay, well, Mexico will have to agree to take on these other 4 countries. Like,
Right.
shit, even right now, people in Mexico are scared to be in Mexico. That's where they're coming here. You have like the narco stuff going on, and people are
Yeah.
not allowed to go outside. And so it's just like, if you're saying this, I think my big takeaway from this is, how do I keep you accountable to actually follow through? How do I know this is not fucking sweet promises in my fucking ear? Like, tell me how I hold you accountable. And I think that's how this can feel better with me, or sit better with me. Like, how do we know we're going towards what you said, and not that you're saying this and then like next year it's gone, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. There needs to be some sort of like tangible thing. Not, oh, we're trying to make it easier, but how about we're guaranteeing we're going to cut down the amount of time it takes to become, a legal citizen, right? Because as a Puerto Rican, I'm completely ignorant to this. You know what I mean? Especially being from up north, where this isn't like something, that is constantly on our radar. I never realized how long it takes for somebody to get fucking citizenship in this country. And that is crazy to me. You're talking about up to a decade or longer for some people, whatever it is, and a lot of these people are like paying taxes while still waiting to get their citizenship, and that just seems so ass backwards, and I think it speaks to the racism, and that that they don't actually want people to be here, regardless of what people talk about. And I understand both talking points, and I know you're talking about your family member who was talking about certain stipulations, or how we have a lot of issues already here with people who are already here. Yeah, we do. The homelessness is an issue in this country, right? War veterans coming back and having nothing, to show for their time, and not being properly taken care of. All of those things are an issue. But I believe we can be doing both, right? We can be figuring out both solutions. If we're sitting here making it easier for tax breaks for the rich, and that money could be going towards helping any one of these problems, that's where the focus should be. That's where the anger should be. But instead, we place it on these migrants who are trying to escape dire circumstances, and forget that this country is a nation of immigrants. Unless you are of native descent, all of us have come here. All of us our families, our ancestral, lineage is all of immigrants. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter if you are white, black, brown, whatever it is. Like, for the most part, unless you have, like I said, a native background, like, we've all immigrated, and somebody from our family has, and that's the premise of the United States of America. But it just is racism that we don't want certain people in here, so we're going to make it more difficult. And I think I agree there is, racism within our own community. Obviously, I can't speak to the Mexican community, but I think there is like this pecking order that tends to happen between, the Latin community as a whole, where there's like, even, I think it was Andrew Schultz has this joke about Cubans where, they're talking about like, yeah, we came over here, but sorry, you guys can't come, and obviously he delivers it a lot better. But it is this idea of like, once you got over here, you want to then like close up everything, so nobody else can. It doesn't make any sense, as far as why you're able to come here, but now nobody else can. It's like just buying into this idea and this lie that, oh, there's not enough room, there's not enough resources. We make that choice as a country by how we decide to put money into things, or how we decide to tax certain people but not others. We're making that choice by not having actual resources. They never have a problem buying new military weapons or anything like that. But somehow, when it comes to solving an issue with homelessness, or solving an issue with dirty water in a poor community, all of a sudden that it's something that we can't seem to solve. And yeah, I mean, I agree. Getting back to your point, to pull it full circle, this has all been a lot of talk. It always is a lot of talk, from both sides on this topic. And there needs to be specific things that they're going to outline, specific milestones that they're going to implement to give us the calm that we want, to know they're actually doing this, right? Like, there needs to be a deadline of like, okay, we're going to fast track citizenship. Everybody who goes through the proper channels will get it in X amount of time. Not this whole dragged out process, that makes people feel helpless when it comes to trying to do that, and I think that's where it starts, to your point, is there has to be some sort of accountability and not just, kind of telling us what we want to hear to our face, but behind closed doors, doing the same shit and not giving people the humanity that they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because even too thinking about it, like so many people are getting scammed, like trying to find a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer to help them get their papers. Like, and I
Right.
had this conversation even with my husband too. I was like, did your parents get scammed? And he was like, yeah, there was, and that's fucked up because
Yeah.
people are putting like deposits down and all kinds of stuff. They're risking it to do these things. And then I think like my little last note too for anyone who might be more on the side of just like there is no space. It's like these people are not leaving their country out of like just shits and giggles. Like I want to live in
Mm-hmm.
America. Like
Right.
no, most of the time, like who just willingly leaves their country, not their town, not their
Right.
house. Like
Right.
you leave your whole country, your whole like identity, your language, your food. You leave it all fucking behind.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, it makes me even like teary. Like, and sometimes with
Yeah.
fucking kids, like you come here with nothing just to try and make something better because it's that fucked up. Like
Yeah.
your fear of your life and your children's life is that fucked up in some other place that you're
Mm-hmm.
like America at least because yeah, even like when shit got really expensive here, I was telling my husband, should we just go back to Mexico? Like my grandpa has a big ranch, like we
Yeah.
could totally live that life, but it's just like it's scary because over there, like if some narco or somebody thinks like you have money or they just
Mm-hmm.
decide to fucking up and take you. Like one of the first
Right.
times I went back to Mexico as an adult, we were gonna go out to like a fair and my uncles were like, what are you gonna wear? And I was like, oh, I was gonna wear this dress. And they're like, you need to be more like in jeans, like covered, because if one of those dudes sees you, and even with your husband, if he decides like I want her, he's
Yeah.
gonna take you. He'll kill him, and that'll be that.
Mm.
Who wants to fucking live in a place like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like yes, fucked up stuff happens in the US, but most of the time, you have some kind of like help, some kind of support, some kind of like security feeling. So yeah, I think just keep in mind that these people aren't coming here to fuck up your life or to
Right.
take your pay or to whatever the fuck. Like no, they're coming here because out of like desesperación, like
Mm-hmm.
I need this security. Like I want to see my kids fucking make it, to teenagers. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's not anything of your like, you know,
Yeah.
issues that you're having. Like that's your guilt. Don't put that
Right.
shit on them, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and the last thing I'll say is because the irony is that a lot of conservatives are against immigration, all of these things, and the politicians will play this game. How whatever, Biden is opening the border, and that's an issue. That's a big like talking point right now, even though it's a fabrication. The irony is these people don't actually want a fast track to immigration like we're talking about. They want it to stay this way because who do you think profits the most off of cheap labor of these immigrants that come into this country? It's these gigantic corporations who are hiring people. It is these business owners that are hiring immigrants who are coming here who have nothing, and they know they can take advantage of them when it comes to the pay and the wage. And if they were to make everybody a citizen and fast track it, or even just end immigration as a whole, all of those businesses would be losing out on the cheap labor that they're taking advantage of. So, for anybody who is on the right, like this is all just a ruse. Don't think that these giant corporations who donate to many of these conservatives actually want, the borders to be completely sealed up or whatever it is, because again, they would lose all of that cheap labor and their profit margins would shrink as a result. So it's just a lot of lies, a lot of people telling us what we want to hear, regardless of where you fall on the aisle. And it's sad because, like you said, these people are coming from really dire circumstances and are not leaving just on a whim because they feel like it. They are leaving because they have no other choice, and they wouldn't never want to leave their life as they knew it behind. If they really did. And obviously, that's really a heavy topic. I get incredibly frustrated about it in general. So we got that out of the way. We're going to talk about some positive stuff here for our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente. All right, so for our Mi Gente segment today, I think this is the first time where I've had somebody end up on both the good and bad aspect of the show. But we had Coachella announce its lineup for this year, and it made history by having Bad Bunny as the first Latin headliner ever, as well as the group Blackpink as the first Asian headlining group. And I think it's incredible because both of them, I'm not super familiar with Blackpink aside from the stuff that is on the radio, like the one or two songs, but they are a K-pop group, if I'm not mistaken. Let me Google that before I offend anybody, but I don't want to. Yeah, they're from South Korea, so they're a K-pop group, and it is impressive to see this because you have Bad Bunny who sings completely in Spanish, right, and is the biggest artist in the world, which is impressive. But it's also equally impressive to see the rise of something like K-pop, where a lot of these people are not singing in English, right? They're singing in their native tongue, yet they have a wild, rabid fan base here in the States. And as much negative shit we could talk about with, feeling like we might be going backwards in different aspects of the world, especially in politics and things like that, I think that pop culture is also a really good kind of litmus test as to where maybe we are moving, hopefully, as a country, as a world in general, where we are embracing people for the unique vantage point that they bring, right? Instead of them having to conform to white American culture, instead, white American culture is coming to them and embracing them and seeing their value, essentially, at the end of the day, as artists. And hopefully we're starting to see this a little bit in Hollywood and things like that. But just seeing that, I mean, and I do hate to kind of always do these stupid things of like first Latin ever, because it's just like it should have already happened. We're celebrating something that should have already happened. But when it comes to this, obviously Coachella is a gigantic deal where you have really the top of the top are the people who are headlining Beyonce, people like that, The Weeknd. And to see Bad Bunny and Blackpink being on now considered on that same level is definitely a beautiful thing.
No, yeah. And that is exciting to me because I'm all about like representation of just like the little kids. Because I know that Coachella is open to families, right? Like there's little kids that go.
Yeah, I don't think there's an age limit on Coachella.
Yeah, because they do like bottle rock here in California, and usually it's all ages. But point is like
Coachella is 18 plus. 18 plus
18
apparently.
plus. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
that's still pretty young.
Like now the representation is just like you can see it and believe like I can do it too, or I'm not excluded, right? And I think that's the fun part. And like you said too, of just like sometimes we feel like we're taking those 10 steps back. Like, are we not moving forward? To me, and I learned this on a master class. I forgot who was teaching it, but he just talks about how like art is like the one, like art and food is like what people could just bond over, right?
Yeah.
And then the example that he used, it was like some like he used it from some like movie, and I think it was like an Italian dude, and he was like talking really bad about Black people, but then he was like you're always talking about Prince, and he's like, yeah, but Prince is Prince, and
right,
you know, so like they try and exclude like these really amazing artists and people from not being like Black or not being whatever group that you don't want like or whatever. And it's just like at the end of the day, like music is some way that we can really connect. Like we might not have nothing in common, but we might both just love one of Bad Bunny's songs or one of these K-pop songs or whatever it is. So I really love that because again, like I'm really optimistic that these next few generations are going to be changing shit up, and that's how they're going to be changing up. They're going to be able to connect through art and connect through food and the things that we can get along with. Like you could have people that hate, you know, Latinos or Latinidad in whatever form, and then they love tacos or whatever, you know.
Right. Like, the irony, the fucking irony of that. Yeah. I think that's a great point because I think music and food and even sports is a great entryway. There's not a lot of pressure into it, right? Into like diving into somebody else's culture. And I think that if people begun to sort of realize, how if you can connect in that way, we probably can connect on far more levels than just that, right? And I think that's what people miss. But that's why I always love giving like music examples or because I think it just is a universal language that I think shows you so much possibility if we just allow ourselves to get over a lot of the just societal norms and the colonizer mindset that's also been instilled and created those norms, and then to your point, I love the idea of the next generation is like really speaking through things like this, right? Where they're showing that, these are the artists that they're getting behind and that they're supporting, and that it doesn't matter if they do or don't look like them. Like great art is great art, and I can connect with anybody that is creating something that I enjoy. It doesn't matter what they look like, and I'll support it, and I just think that is a really beautiful and profound thing, and it does give hope. It definitely does begin to give hope when people can kind of step outside of their own comfort zone and support other cultures or communities that may not look like them. And then to your point, those of us who do look like them, it's incredible to see the fact that we don't have to change ourselves to find success. I think that's the biggest thing. That's why I always talk about somebody like Bad Bunny so much, because I think it is that great example that if he can do it, a kid from a very small town and a small island in the middle of the Caribbean that didn't speak English, if he could find this sort of success in his niche, in his field, there's no reason why you have to sit there and change who you are just to find some sort of success, and that's the beauty of an example like this one and Coachella. I mean, they're making a ton of money off it, so I don't know if I say salute to Coachella for doing that, but it's not like those artists didn't deserve it with their following. Now moving on here, I wanna quickly touch on your podcast, Toxica in Recovery. Anybody that's not familiar, I mean, what's kind of the gist of what you're doing?
The gist of Toxica in Recovery is pretty much just personal development, like especially from a perspective of a Latina, because I know a lot of people do not care for the term toxica because it gets thrown around now like as a fun thing, like, oh yeah, I'm a toxica.
Right.
But I dive deeper into that in just the sense that I believe that those toxic traits and states that we develop, they usually come because of trauma and because of like generational cycles we've been on. So Toxica in Recovery is just very much meant to like help you help yourself and discover like where are these toxic traits and states coming from,
Right.
and like and accepting that they're going to be with us forever because they might not fully go away. Your imposter syndrome, it's because it's that, like, I call toxica like my inner chatter, like that self-doubt, the limiting beliefs, like all of that shit talking that goes on in your head, because it's everyone. Like, I'm sure it's even to you, like you talk about it on your podcast all the time. And so just because you're reaching these milestones don't mean that these thoughts just go blank and now you're like always perfect. So Toxic Recovery is that. It's the recovery of like, how do we accept that these thoughts are there and change the ones that are really not serving us? And then even use some of them that come up a lot to see like, okay, well, what is it that we need to change? What is it that, and I try not use the word fix, because I'm like, it's not that we need to be fixed. It's just that we need to deal with our stuff and heal our stuff. And so that's what Toxic Recovery is all about. Just getting that recovery.
I love that, because I love it from a couple of angles. I think first and foremost, because of the stereotype that exists of the quote unquote crazy Latin woman, right? And I think that to be able to, have a vulnerable space where you can talk about your toxic traits or your trauma and it not be used as something against you, but rather, talking about it as a means to embracing it in the form of healing, I think is a really positive thing. And at the same time, I think that, there's a lot of talk of toxic masculinity, and all of that is a real thing. And men, being shitheads and all of the above when it comes to relationships and things like that. And just like it's, I think, important for men to have those vulnerable conversations where they take accountability for that type of behavior. I think it also is, when you have kind of the stereotype of a relationship, it is interesting to kind of hear a woman's perspective of saying like, yeah, maybe I'm also like contributing to the toxicness of this relationship. And it's not just like men who have, whatever fuckboy tendencies. Like, women also have certain things that they may bring into the equation that's not healthy for a real relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that comes a lot, because if you are having or experiencing like toxic traits that you just not haven't worked on or dealt with or like started to dig into, like, no matter if you get the most perfect man, like the one that everybody says doesn't exist, which I think my husband is perfect, but like even if had he met me, and he still met me, I think, when I started like my healing journey. But like, if you're not dealing with your shit, you could meet the perfect person and you're still gonna take all that shit with them. And if you really love them, that doesn't mean that you want them to be tolerating and putting up with your shit, like that's messed up. Because I know how heavy it could be with myself. Why would I want to go dump that on somebody that I love? So I think it's it's really important to do that work yourself and know that it's an ever changing journey. Like I think, I have this thing that I want to make it to 100. Like I want to be a healthy centenarian. So
Sure.
I'm sure even at like 99, like I'll still be dealing with some shit. Like my kid or my grandkid or somebody might still,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. And I had heard this thing about recovery programs like AA or something that they tell you from the get, like, I wish you a long recovery because they say it'll be forever ongoing. And so that's where the recovery part came from, toxic and recovery, because I was like, it's going to be a forever thing. Like I have no control over what may happen in my life, what circumstances. I know that life is not forever. So I know I'm going to lose loved ones at some point. Like, and sometimes if you don't have the tools to handle life's up and downs, like a death of a loved one is one of the things that really like spirals people to just lose it, right? Like to go through these things. So I know that it's going to be forever ongoing. And I know that, yes, like as funny as sometimes memes might be or whatever about toxica, like it's kind of sad when you dig deep down to figure out what it is, like why you're doing this crazy shit. But I also just want to give it out there to women. I know specifically, like I tend to speak to like millennial Latinas, but dudes could listen to anyone else. For the most part, I put like prompts or questions for people to ask themselves, and like, and I'm like, you're not going to get better if you don't actually write these questions down and answer them, or like give yourself the time to reflect on them. But just know that you're not alone for sure. Like, I think that was my big thing, because for a long time you feel like you're crazy. Like, am I the only one doing this? Am I the only one that just fucking broke somebody's phone, or like just whatever it was, right? Like, and so no, you're not alone. And more than likely that has come from like something that you learned, or some kind of self-defense wall that you build up. So how do we embrace that? Yeah. And then just move forward and try and heal. And because like, I keep saying, like, those future generations are watching us. Like, they're watching us, like, yesterday, I told my 2-year-old, I was on an important call, and she kept like, "Mom, Mom, Mom," and I was like, "Shush." And then afterwards, she was like, "Mama, don't shush me." And I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry, I won't shush you." And it's like, they're watching. Even at 2 years old, they're watching. So that's what toxic and recovery is all about. Because I'm not trying to have 3 generations forward still going through the same shit that me and my family have gone through.
Yeah, I don't think my mom would have apologized if I told her not to shush me. So that's a beautiful side of growth. Man, so last thing real quick, looking forward into 2023, do you have an overarching kind of vision for your year that you're hoping for?
Yeah, my overarching vision for 2023 is to like expand the amount of people that I am able to reach, like on a vocal level, even through this podcast, and just really inspire and uplift them. Inspire and uplift them. I don't know if I said that right. Because sometimes like you just have like life is kicking you down, and it's just like one shit after another. So sometimes you just need that little bit of inspiration. And yes, the inspiration is not going to solve anything, but it's going to give you that little bit of energy to just fucking stand back up, to get out of the bed, to shower, to brush your teeth, whatever it is, because sometimes it's really that hard. Like, it's really hard to even get out of bed. And then just uplift. Like, again, I want to uplift my communities. And when I say my communities, I'm not only meaning like a millennial or Latina, but also, like I said, I come from the hood. So sometimes we don't have the resources to know certain things. And a huge thing that I do too is like college, not having a college degree. Like, I consider that my community too, because for so long, and even sometimes now, my toxica little thoughts come in of just like, you can't help someone. Like, you don't even have a degree. How are you going to help someone? But even like back to like what we talked about at the beginning, where this guy faked his credentials of where he went to school or where he would have. So I'm like, here I am, like thinking I can't help someone because I don't have the degree, but there's someone who really doesn't have the degree, and they're fucking faking it and making all these people believe these things. So if I could, without a degree, make people believe in themselves and that they can do the things, like, why not? So that's my vision of like being able to spread my message further to help uplift my community, so that they can really just start trying to live what I call like their daydream life, which, like, it doesn't have to be necessarily a millionaire. Maybe at some point it is, but to me, like, my daydream life was being able to be with my kids, see my husband every day, spend some time together. So it doesn't have to be this huge fucking thing, but just knowing that you can have the dream that you, the daydreams that you have, the shit that you think about when you're at work and you're like, oh, if I
Right,
had,
right,
you know,
right, right.
like that.
Nah, I love that. That's so beautiful. All right, so Toxic in Recovery, they can find it anywhere they find podcasts. Where can people follow you and keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. That's probably the only place you'll find me because I haven't really delved into anything else. But you can find me
Sure.
on Instagram at BrenJ Life Coaching. And then I have my website. That's BrenJLifeCoaching.com. There's links in my bio on Instagram for people that want to work with me one-on-one because I just started taking on one-on-one clients for life coaching. And then for the people that are just not there yet, listen to the podcast and actually take the time to like reflect on those questions. I try and do like 4 on each episode. So 4 little questions or prompts that you could just really think about. And the feedback that I've gotten, it is helping. It's helping. So many of us have, there's so much shit to work through and it doesn't have to be huge. Like actually, I tell you, don't try and take the big step. Don't try and change all at once. Take the little baby step. Answer 1 question today, 1 question tomorrow, you know? So that's where you guys can find me.
I love it. Well, listen, I appreciate you hopping on the show. We got a lot of cool things in the works behind the scenes as well, so I'm excited for all that stuff. And man, we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you so much for this, Dramos.
Man, big shout out to my guest this week, Brenda Juarez, aka Brenda J. Always appreciate her perspective. She's been a day one listener. I love what she's been doing. Her podcast, the life coaching stuff, really dope. So make sure you go check her out, give her a follow, go check out her website, try and schedule some life coaching. I know we all need that. I've been enjoying having a life coach this year. That was, I guess I started at the end of last year, but it's been really, really helpful for me. So I definitely highly suggest looking into that. And man, with that said, let's get y'all's take on one of these topics for our Ask a Gringo segment.
Ask a Gringo. I have a question.
All right, so my question for today's Ask a Gringo segment is based off of Bad Bunny throwing a fan's phone. So I want to get y'all's take, hear what you think about it. Everybody's giving a lot of different hot takes. They got all kinds of opinions on this. So I'm going to read a few because I know we're getting a little bit long in the episode. So at Def Not Ant says, life is about making memories. And that lady has a memory that will last forever. Oh, man. Yeah, that is true. That is true. We're laughing at this person's expense. Yeah, I feel bad that somebody lost a phone. They're not cheap, to come by any means. But I think it is a lesson in treating people like human beings. And as much as I don't think he should have tossed her phone in the water, he probably could have just said something. Listen, everything you do has consequences, and celebrities are people just like us. They get annoyed. They don't want you to disrespect them. And this whole idea that we think we can just throw phones in people's faces and they're supposed to perform for us, I think is a bit ridiculous. At A. Bjork says, pay all that money for security just to open yourself up to a property damage claim. Shaking my head. And that's actually very true. Because I was thinking to myself, the man is surrounded by security, but somehow this girl just gets in there in between all of them and is filming while they're walking. I don't know where he got his security from, but they definitely did not earn their check that day. Because listen, God forbid, first of all, what makes this worse is you don't know what somebody's intentions are, right? They could be trying to hurt him or whatever, and you're going to be that lax and lackadaisical about somebody approaching him. I think is definitely security has to hold some sort of blame as well. And granted, he spent all that on it, but he's got the money. He can handle a little damage claim. Let's see. Last one here at Nicolosa_Vega says, it was a dick move, pero it's Bad Bunny, LOL. Yeah. That's kind of I feel like that kind of sums up how I'm feeling. Yeah, it was kind of dickish. I get it, but it was still dickish. And at the end of the day, it is Bad Bunny. The man has kept his nose clean thus far. This is the first controversy, negative controversy, I feel that we've really seen from him. And I'm sure, he was it being his best version of himself. But again, I think it is a lack of respect just to be throwing phones in people's faces and expecting something from them without asking first and making sure that they're okay with what you're doing. And it is Bad Bunny. We love Bad Bunny. We stand for Bad Bunny. Man, with that said, thank y'all so much for participating in this week's Ask a Gringo segment at DJ Dramos on Instagram if you want to be part of the show. And with that said, man, let's wrap everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for Conclusion Stew.
All right, so I already kind of went in on the Bad Bunny situation ad nauseum at this point. Again, people are human beings. They have to be treated as such and with respect. And you can't just be throwing phones in front of people's faces for your own clout and expect them to perform for you, right? Like, treat him as a human being, show some respect. Again, I don't think he should have been throwing somebody's phone in the water like that, but, everything does have consequences. Let's talk about the Republicans. Kevin McCarthy, 15 votes to elect him to the House. You had Republicans holding out just for what seemed like so they can get better positions and kind of use their limited numbers to strong arm Kevin McCarthy into giving them positions. A lot of these people were like the radical MAGA crowd. Matt Gaetz, from Colorado, whose name is escaping me for good reason, probably Marjorie Taylor Greene. These crazy people. Anyway, it's just scary to me, the game that these people are making public office at this point, right? They're not there to serve the American people. If they were, they wouldn't be doing, stupid moves like this. They would get it over with and not waste people's time and get to work on improving the things they claim they want to do when they're running for office. But it's not about that. It's about power. It is about undying loyalty to this cult, and it's our tax dollars that are paying for it, and sadly our livelihood that is at stake. When it comes to President Biden, he is expanding Trump's Title 42. Now, granted, his hands are tied. He tried to upend it. The Supreme Court blocked it. So he's claiming that this will eventually help expand legal migration. We'll see what happens. I think that was a great kind of point from Brenda, is instead of just telling us what you're going to do, as far as making empty promises, make specific guidelines as far as what your plan is. I think this idea that it takes somebody a decade to become an American citizen is absolutely ridiculous. And, if we would figure something else around that to make it easier, because we know they can. They've done it before for, Cuban migrants who were escaping Castro. Fast track them to citizenship for a year. We know it can be done. I think that would begin to help a lot of the issues that we're seeing in this country. And again, to her point, people aren't just coming here because they feel like on a whim going to the United States. Like, they're trying to escape something dire and they need help. And we are a country of immigrants, so we're supposed to be the place that people can go to. That has been what we've been historically, right? And of course, when it's people of color, when it's brown people, we all of a sudden, I don't know if we could do this. And that's where the fuckery comes into place. And Democrats or Republicans both have been atrocious on immigration policies. So hopefully Biden addresses that. And on some positive news, man, for our Mi Gente segment, love seeing the diversity as far as like the headliners go with Coachella, Bad Bunny being one of the headliners, Blackpink being one of the headliners. I think it's incredible. And again, music to me is that analogy that brings us all together and shows me the possibility of a world where we, don't have to get obsessed with the colonial poison of superiority and white supremacy, and recognize that these are artists that oftentimes are speaking and singing in their native tongue, yet are making music that is so good that it becomes universal and can be enjoyed by anybody. And I think that's how we all have to look at each other's culture and each other's communities and embrace diverse stories and interactions that we have with people, seeing them as human and having something to offer. And I think music is that beautiful, beautiful kind of gateway, that entry point for that conversation. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into today's episode. I'll catch y'all on Tuesday with a brand new one. Again, if you haven't checked out The Street Stoic, please check out my new podcast, daily podcast, short, like 10 to 15 minutes. Your just daily shot of inspiration, hip hop lyrics and quotes, combining that with ancient Stoic philosophy to inspire you. Monday through Friday, a brand new episode to start your day with. The Street Stoic podcast. Check that out wherever you find podcasts, and like it, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're trying to build this bad boy up. Now, that's it. Enough promotion. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday with a brand new episode. Until then, stay safe. Peace.